Morning, Marlon. Morning to your listeners as well.
All right, very well. For starters, SSP, we are fairly aware as to what characterizes the crime situation in Jamaica and the context within which the police operate. Give us, from your vantage point as a senior superintendent of police and as communication strategist with the force, the overview and approach of the police to crime management in this calendar year and indeed beyond. Let's start there. Your own overview or assessment of the thrust at present.
Well, all right. Good question. I think that we can't look at this year in isolation because it's not within the context of itself alone. There are strategic priorities of the Jamaica Constabulary Force that we are focused on. There are, for instance, a number of strategic priorities, and among them, we're looking at, for instance, not just crime management and reduction, but the program of transformation and modernization continues. Community engagement is something very, very important. When we look at stakeholder engagement, improving the quality of stakeholder engagement, all of these things are critical. But I think to the point of your question, the majority of people want to see the impact of crime reduction and crime management, because the notion is that violence and criminal activity is too high in Jamaica. And so I think that's the area of our strategic priorities that most people have a vested interest in because they want to feel safer. Now, if you look at over the period, maybe since 2017, when we had a very high very high number of murders, which was a build-up, I think, from 2014. It was escalating each quarter by quarter, year on year, until it hit the height of 2017. Yeah. It has been coming down since 2017. I think the first year of Major General Anthony Anderson as commissioner, there was a 22% reduction. And then it has been almost a stabilization, a 3% reduction here, a 1% increase here, and then that kind of a fluctuation. What we're seeing is now the years of strategic work beginning to pay off, where we're seeing year on year on year a reduction. 8% reduction, 19% reduction. Now we're seeing a further reduction as of this morning. As of yesterday, was in the high 20s. So when we're looking at that, we are, for all intents and purposes, using all of the tools that are available to us. In each division has a policing plan with targets that it is pursuing. Each formation has plans and strategies that they are seeking to implement in order to redound to a particular end, which we are trying to reduce the number of homicides, for instance, in particular major crimes overall, but we're particularly homicides, we're seeking to reduce it below 1,000, because for years the research has said that we need to get to that critical point of getting us below 800 so that we can see real multiplier effects of reduction in violence and violent crime. So when we look at those things, every policing division in Jamaica and every formation in the JCF has to complete and present its policing plan. And I think that what we're seeing is a very targeted strategy at going after high-risk offenders, the persons who are causing the most trouble, and bringing them in. If you notice, we have said that we are going to dismantle organized crimes.
Yeah.
Organized criminal entities.
Primarily gangs, yeah.
Right.
Gangs
so
being
what
the
we're seeing,
premier manifestation.
and what you've seen over the last 5 years, haven't you seen, whether it's West Kings Valley, whether it's clans and others, Wilson, that you have seen us go for the gangs and put large numbers of violent offenders before the courts, because that's the strategy, that if we can destabilize and dismantle criminal organizations, criminals exist for the most part within the context of the organizations. Their guns exist within the context of the organization, and so that strategy continues to work. And so what we are seeing this year is the continued improvement in intelligence gathering and through the use of technology. You're seeing an improvement in investigations. You're seeing an improvement in strategic operations. You're seeing an improvement in workforce management. You're seeing an improvement in how we manage the organization and manage our resources. And as a result, you are seeing it become very difficult for persons to commit crimes and get away with it. I'm sure you would say that increasingly you hear about a murder and you shortly thereafter hear about somebody being charged.
Indeed, someone either being identified, a motive emerging, or someone being apprehended.
And these are things that you are hearing about in greater frequency, and you're hearing about in a shorter time span. To the point where, as a person who engages with media, sometimes the incident happens and reporters are calling me the same day or the next day to ask me if anybody's in custody, if anybody has been charged. And I have to say, slow down, allow the good investigative work to take place. But people have become so used to cases being resolved and matters being settled and people being put before the court in a timely manner.
All right, SSP Brooks, we are mindful of the historical scourge that has beset law enforcement in this country, allegations of excesses and so on. I wanted to present a perspective, albeit with context of the JSF. We are mindful of where you come to the discussion from. You are, an SSP. Give us a sense as to the efforts that are placed on ensuring that members are held to account and that police excesses and certainly extrajudicial killings are not countenanced, encouraged, or in any way provided with succor among the police, by the police high command in particular.
Well, I think our position is very clear, and that is why we have repeatedly said that we support the work of INDicom, because INDicom exists as an independent body to hold us accountable. And so INDicom, its purpose for existence is to ensure that if anyone within the organization believes that they can flout the rules, flout the policies, and flout the laws, then they will be held to account. Indeed, also internally, iProbe is managing our own ways in which we conduct ourselves is so. And so I am not going to say that every member is perfect, but what I will say is that I have confidence in the training that the members, especially the operational support teams that are out there, the area fugitive apprehension teams, and CTOC and all of the other entities within the organization, that I am confident, and I know that these operational members, they retain the confidence of the high command, and that is why their instruction is to utilize their training. Every single time you go out on duty and you are briefed on use of force policy, you are briefed on human rights policy, you are briefed on diversity policy. Every single time. There's nobody who leaves out for an operation who is not reminded of what the force policies are where these things are concerned, so that it is always forefront in the mind of the person going out on an operation that they must speak to people properly, they must have due regard for people's human rights, and there must be a clear understanding of use of force. Every single time a member is going to for requalification in the use of their firearm, you have to spend the day or two being reacquainted with force policy before you even go out on the range to be requalified to use the firearms that you are issued. Because so important it is to the Department of Weapons and Tactical Training that they make sure to retrain you in human rights policy. So I say that to say that we are not going out there to flout laws. Again, some of the times, I mean, given that you're not working with perfect individuals, things may happen, and that is why there's INDicom. And overwhelmingly, the INDicom investigations vindicate the actions of the police.
I noted that because speaking elsewhere in Radioland on Monday on a particular program sponsored by JFJ, essentially, Hugh Faulkner, the commissioner of INDicom, apprised Jamaica that just about 5% of the matters that it would have recommended to the DPP for prosecution, and they go to prosecution with those matters, just about the successful the conviction rate is in the order of 5%.
No, hold on. Bear in mind that when INDicom investigates, so look at the sum that INDicom is investigating and ask yourself, what percentage does INDicom vindicate and say this was a legitimate, shooting, by virtue of their investigation, they have deemed that this was a legitimate shooting.
Indeed, and in those matters, you wouldn't have a recommendation to the DPP.
Exactly, and then among the ones now that you may recommend for charge, what is your success rate among those? That is the thing that people have to look at numbers, because there are percentages sometimes when we are having these conversations. So listen carefully. Also ask yourself, for instance, if Officer Morgan in his private capacity loses his cool and does something untoward with his weapon, whether it's his personal one or government issued, INDicom investigates that and includes that in their numbers. Isn't that so?
But that is not pursuant to JCF operations, indeed.
But was Officer Morgan operating in the context of a police officer or doing the police duty?
No, I mean, I was a private citizen at the time.
Factor those things into the numbers.
Indeed.
Some of the times there are these convenient comparisons in Jamaica that I think are unfair. Like when people want to compare with George Floyd and others. Bear in mind that in many instances in the United States, when people hear of police fatal engagements, these are fatal engagements that arose from routine traffic stop, or request for assistance at someone's home, or these kinds of things.
And things escalated,
escalate, and you wonder, and you see body cam footage, and you wonder, how did it escalate there? When was the last time you heard, or how frequently do you hear a police fatal encounter in Jamaica arising out of a traffic stop?
Indeed.
But people want to draw proximity to the outrage in the United States, in Jamaica, and I think that is a convenient proximity, and it's a convenient outrage.
I want to raise on perhaps the last question we will have time for an interview, SSP Brooks, the matter of body cams. You will find that a number of advocates, JFJ numbers among them, this is a matter that INDicom continues to raise. What is the state of play vis-a-vis body cams and their deployment amongst members of the JCF?
All right. First of all, in answering that question, I would say that the JCF has been open on this matter, and the JCF has always made the same critics aware of what the state of play is. And so any statement other than the facts, then I don't know why one would want to misrepresent what the facts are, but the facts are not hidden. So we have made it clear that it does not make sense you expend taxpayers' money to put in place body cameras in a system, in a context where there is no back-end storage facility with the integrity to preserve
footage,
the evidentiary value of the footage that you would capture, and you can't even store the footage. So for the past 3 to 5 years, we have had to spend many millions of dollars to do the back end work. We have done the technological outfitting at a cost of many millions of dollars. On top of that, you do the training, you have the policy, you have everything in place so that you can eventually roll them out. Up to at present, we have about 750 cameras in widespread use. And those cameras are on the bodies of members of the constabulary force who exist in high public engagement, high public interaction context, very much like what you would see in the US with persons who are engaging members of the public. If you notice, we used to have a lot of videos of persons videoing their interactions with the police, and it is important for us when we turn on that camera, when we have on that camera on the body, immediately the engagement is different because people know that they're being recorded too, so they begin to behave differently.
Oh, good point.
I can tell you. And so we see it as a tool of accountability, but we also see it as a tool of vindication.
There you go.
And so what we've seen is that there has been, in many instances, a reduction in the hostilities that you get when the members of the public engage with the police, because you may be recording, but I am also recording, because I don't know if you've ever seen a viral video begin at the beginning of the interaction. It always begins at a point that is not advantageous to the member of the police. Yeah. Or if you've seen a video that emerges and then another video from another vantage point tells a completely different story. So we don't have to be sold on the importance of body cameras. We believe in it, but we have 8,000 operational members. If we had 4,000 cameras, it would go significantly far in outfitting the bulk of our operational members with body cams. But we cannot. We live in a developing economy. We cannot just procure cameras on the fly. We have budgets. We have to compete with other public entities that need funding. And so, for instance, we may be in a situation where, all right, I can tell you, we're in the process of attempting to procure 1,000 body cameras.
Yeah.
Right. We are in the process of trying to procure an additional 1,000 body cameras this year. 1,000 body cameras works out to be approximately 204 million Jamaican dollars. 204 million. The 750 body cameras cost about 153 million Jamaican dollars. Now, governments have budgets with competing interests. And so we are completely aware that we're not going to get all the body cameras that we need at once.
Yeah.
And so we get, if the government gives us 100 million, there's only so many that we can purchase. And when we purchase them, we have to put them operationally where they are of best operational value. And I don't know that a human rights entity is able or has
better able to, yeah.
I don't know that a human rights entity can better make operational decisions than the people who do the work operationally.
Indeed. We have to leave it there, SSP Brooks. You have unpacked quite a bit, and I'm sure for many of our listeners, you have brought some insights that hitherto they would not have been seized of, and that is greatly appreciated, SSP.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right, so that was Senior Superintendent of Police, Dennis Brooks with the JCF. And after the break, listeners, we come back to our phone lines. Our flow line is 212-9824. Our digital line is 462-0919. But remember, you can call across networks if you wish. And essentially, we will field your calls when we return here on Straight Up. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. You're tuned to Straight Up right here on the sound of News Talk 93 FM. I am Marlon Morgan. We are running back to the phone lines, listeners. Gather, we have a call. Hello, good morning, caller.
Hi, Marlon.
Hi. Sounds like OB. Good morning, Conrad. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm very well, thank you.
Very well, thanks. Thanks for your call. What's going on?
All right, good. This morning, I was listening to your opening commentary. And, I said I would just talk to you. And because especially when you broadcast from a premier learning institution, I believe that one has to be very careful and put forward the truth and accuracy in one's pronouncement. And I'm saying it against the background because that's the way you skirt around and you try to create even a redefinition of inflation. And it is simply, Marlon.
Of inflation?
I'm sorry, of recession, I'm sorry.
I see.
Recession is indeed recession. However, you have different aspects of recession. For example, the recession that we're talking about in Jamaica now is what we call a V-shaped recession, or it could be described as a V-shaped recession, which is not the very hard type of inflation thing that can basically decimate the economy. Although it could lead to that if you don't deal with the underpinnings there. It's not like a L-shaped recession that is very much devastating. And, the Department of Economics and so on at the University of the West Indies, they would be able to say to the country that this is so. This is so, and I believe to basically be trying to move around, whether it's from you or other operative within the government or within the society. We have to be careful because, especially you're sitting in there in Marlon, not as a caller when you call me, but you're there as a host from yesterday to today. So you can't be, you must basically give the definition. Let the people know, will decide as to whether or not, but to try to redefine the meaning of inflation, it's unbecoming.
All right, so I would have heard your opening observation at least, and let me just say this in no uncertain terms. Among other things, I situated in my opening commentary this morning that for all intents and purposes, a recession is a significant downturn in economic activity. Now, just to be very clear, I made mention of what I have described as an antiquated and perhaps anachronistic definition via the textbook of a recession being 2 successive quarters of of declining economic output. I made mention of that to make the point that an isolated look at what the economic outturn from a GDP standpoint is insufficient to characterize the state of a national economy as being in recession, because there are other metrics. What I'm saying, wouldn't want us to speak at the same time. I allowed you and heard it just now. I'm just positing my own views, and then you come back and chime in. So what I'm saying,
when you say something when it makes sense, it has to be pointed out. It can't be
my brother,
because
which
it
is
don't
precisely the
suit
point I'm making.
It can't be because it don't suit
I am not taking positions. All right, let me allow you. Go ahead.
It can't be because it don't suit you or suit anybody. You are creating the redefinition as we go along. It's like you're changing the rules in the middle of a football or a cricket match. And this is the point I'm making.
And that is not the case. So Obi,
this is the point I'm making.
Yeah, go ahead.
Especially when you sit behind the mic as a host, not as a political act.
No, man, that's fine. I am very mindful of the capacity in which I'm sitting.
When you come and you call and you try to twist the fact.
Yeah.
When you're a host, you're in a different capacity, my brother.
All right. So let me say this now, because I've heard it just now, and I'll say this. There's no doubt in my mind, having regard to reasons that I know and appreciate, that your view and my view on this matter will not converge. There's no view in my mind as to that. What I'm putting to you, as we heard from the Planning Institute of Jamaica, OB, a focus on the GDP outturn alone is insufficient and invariably does one's analysis a disservice. Although Jamaica recorded 2 successive quarters of downturn, and we know the basis on which that happened, you do not have any significant downturn in economic activity. You do not have any jobs being lost in droves in the country.
Marlon Morgan, that is the very reason why you have different type of recession.
No, we're not getting into the shape, whether U-shape, V-shape, or L-shape.
Marlon, you're not going to do it, and you're not going to get away with it. Certainly not with me.
Right, so
and hold on, and this is the thing now. This is the thing. You said you know that your view and mine not going to converge.
It will forever diverge on this matter.
Will diverge.
Yeah.
However, I am saying to you that it don't have to be, because all we're looking at is the meaning and the definition of what a recession is.
All right, let me cut to the...
I said to you, I said to you over and over, both on air and off air, even this morning you called me and invited me to basically have this discussion with you. Right? I said to you that, listen, what would have been more tidy is for the government and even the head of the PIOG and people like yourself to do is not try to redefine the meaning of recession, but to say to the people that based on the underpinnings that we have in the economy, we don't believe that this is one that will affect the fabric of what we have in Jamaica.
Do you mind pausing now? Do you mind pausing now?
Yes.
I'm inviting you to pause now so I can respond.
Yeah, man.
Conrad O'Brien cannot arrogate unto himself a role in advising the government or the Planning Institute of Jamaica, because quite frankly, the government is not doing any of what Conrad O'Brien is positing that it is doing, i.e. redefining the term recession. In all my commentary on this program and elsewhere across media, and I have spoken on this matter several times over, we note that the textbook definition is an antiquated, insufficient, and superficial one in relation to 2 successive quarters of contraction in economic output. Hold on, Conrad. I'm allowing you know. So we're not in any rush, and I'm putting it to you that I would prefer for you to speak and then I speak so the listeners can have the benefit of the robust and the spirited and intense debate, if that is what is to ensue. So just to be clear, I'm putting it to you that all the things that would characterize a recession, such as significant downturn in economic activity, significant loss of income, people losing jobs jobs in droves, and the fiscal health of the country being impaired in terms of government spending and being adversely impacted, tax revenues falling off because you're having the downturn in several sectors, as we saw in 2009, for example, when the hotel sector fell out and other sectors such as those were adversely impacted by the global economic recession of 2008. I am putting it to you and other observers and commentators, OB, that Jamaica, notwithstanding the antiquated textbook definition, is not in a recession, because you have to look at this in a way that is not superficial.
No,
that's the simple point we're making.
No, and there's where you go wrong.
That's fine. Where you go wrong. Remember, you are like a Methodist, and I am like a Pentecostal on this matter.
I wanted to tell any A level. Well, no, Cape. When I did it was A level. I wanted to tell any A level student that is writing economics to tell them that which you just posit and let them put it on any paper.
Can I suggest this to you, OB?
They would get you for it ungradable.
Well, let me say this to you, OB, because you may not. Hold on, man. I'm going to allow you to make the point.
Finish the point.
Oh, sure, go ahead.
Let me finish the point. Because the fact of the matter is that, and that is what I sometimes my stomach turn with the politics, you know. Turn with the politics, because what happened is that the level of this dishonesty, it is so palpable, and it is one of the things that is really, it is so palpable.
Yeah, I'm going to share some with the OB, because
that's one of the reasons. That is one of the reasons why so many people are being turned off from the process. Because
I'm going to share two things with you.
What it takes for people just to be honest and to say, yes, we're in our recession based on the definition of recession.
People
However,
get up in Jamaica, go work a man in time. In what recession? What recession are you referring to?
That are there. Marlon, Morgan, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Hold a moment. Hold a moment, my brother, because I'm going to say two things to you. But before I do that, I will say to you, people in Jamaica get up a man in time and go work. In fact, employers in Jamaica are struggle to recruit people into their organizations. I go to many business establishments as I conduct my day-to-day business, and I see post notices on the boards indicating that we are hiring. I then list out the people that they're hiring. But just to be clear, OB, I am putting it to you. I am putting. Hold on a minute. I'm making a point. I heard you a while ago, and I'm responding to a point you made. Right? You referenced the economic student sitting economics, whether at the Cape level or up in Cambridge at the A level. Just to be clear, my brother, do you know that the student who can exhibit a greater degree of appreciation and higher order thinking, rather than a student who comes and recites by rote something that is situated in the textbook, the student who can be more dexterous and enterprising and engaging in their discussion by saying, listen, while the textbook definition, these two successive quarters of the economic contraction, what is happening in the Jamaican economy does not accord with an economic recession, in that these things are happening. Bam, bam, bam. Do you know that student, OB, will score higher on Cape than what you would write on your paper?
Let me say something to you, Marlon.
So for you to come and regurgitate something from a textbook, you would not score high marks because you're not exhibiting evaluation skills or synthesis skills or analytical skills.
The last time I checked, you weren't wearing an hearing aid. So I know you hear me quite clearly. And what you just said a while ago is the exact point I am making. You hear what you said? They would first of all point out the textbook definition.
Which is what I have done. But I have described the textbook definition as superficial.
You're trying to say that we are not in our recession. Indeed, we are.
We are. The Jamaican economy, OB, for all intents and purposes, is not in a recession. The PIOJ said that.
We are in a recession. The Jamaica economy has suffered two major quarters of decline. One of 3.5%.
What I'm going to ask you then, and 1.8. Yeah, man, let me help with the numbers.
And 1.8.
Yeah, man, 3.5 and 1.8. All right, so let me take you here now.
I remember you had said to me elsewhere that it was 1%.
Hold on. Let's go with this, OB, right? Cite, for the benefit of our listeners, any policy error, any policy failure on the part of the wholeness-led Jamaica Labour Party government that has caused the 3.5% contraction that you just espoused just now, and the estimated 1.8 contraction in economic output for the December quarter as reported by the PIOJ last week. Cite the policy error or the structural deficiency or gap in the economy that caused that. Cite it for the listeners.
I could, Marlon, but I'm not going to go there. You know why? I would be joining into the fallacy, because the fallacy is, because the fallacy, the argument is not about whether or not Mr. Holness and his team went over to Portmore and pushed down 20 people house, and that results in a depression.
You're reaching, Obi. You're reaching, Obi.
Right?
That's a stretch. You're reaching.
That's not the point. The point is that we are in our recession, whether it is by burial or anything, because there are various things that cause a recession.
Yeah,
and as I said to you, and as I said to you during our discourse, if you have a situation where a major accident kills someone, a major accident kills someone, the person died on the spot, or if somebody was injured in an accident, taken to the hospital, die a couple of days after, and when the autopsy is shown, it shows that that person died as a result of injury from the car accident. The cause of death would still be as a result of the accident. So, I mean, Marlon, and I'm saying this, that, it's almost a waste of intellectual rigor to be trying to make this kind of point, to defend.
All right, so Obi,
Dr. King came out and said, this discussion
I'm happy you mentioned that, because I am going to... Obi, I don't want us to speak at the same time, so I've heard you. I am pivoting away from that now, and I'm happy that you have essentially led me to the point where I wanted to get to in this conversation. You mentioned Dr. King. Damian King, speaking elsewhere in Raiderland, basically made the point that this squabbling over 1% growth or 1% contraction is of no moment. But you know what Dr. King escaped? What escaped him? Dr. King doesn't understand, perhaps, what people like myself understand. It is not the economics of this conversation that is of particular moment here. It is the politics of this conversation that is of moment here, which is what my entire opening observation this morning, my opening commentary was predicated on that. And I'll tell you what I mean by that. This whole discussion, this whole view being posited by people like Ralston Hyman, people like Conrad O'Brien, and people like Colin Bell is to essentially suggest that Jamaica is in a recession because somehow there's a calculation politically that if we sell a narrative that Jamaica is doing poorly on the economic front, it may prop up the political fortunes of the people who form the parliamentary opposition. And I am urging well-thinking Jamaicans to look at what actually matters and do not be misled by persons who have their snouts transfixed on the political trough. Because for us and Hyman to talk about recession when there are no jobs being lost in Jamaica in droves, there is no significant downturn in economic activity in the country, I believe that it strains credibility and it is just hogwash. Do not fool the people with superficial textbook reasoning.
One of my callers said recently that, you know what, Marlon Morgan tried too hard to be getting a look at by Prime Minister Holness, and you must stop it. You don't have to try so hard, because here you are ascribing to myself, Ralston Hyman and Colin Bell, the work of PIOJ and Statin. I know we measure it, brethren, and we put it out there. And I'll say one thing in regard to what
made that point. No, nobody suggested that.
And I will say one thing in regard to what that can be simply deduced from what you just said, my brother. And I'll say one thing to you in the case of Dr. King. Save and accept that we're not talking about a 1% decline in the economy. We're talking about cumulatively 5.3% decline, my brother.
So just to be clear, on account of that,
and we must get away, and hold on, and we must get away from this discourse that once you put something in the public domain and you talk about it, it means that you hate Jamaica and so on. It is the furthest thing from the truth. The last time that I checked, the only prime minister to sit in Jamaica House that went abroad and badmouth Jamaica was the late Edward Seaga. I don't want to speak left the dead, but that's what I know.
Let me say
this. That is documented.
You're reaching, but let me say this.
So don't go there. Don't go there.
So I allowed you a while ago, right?
It is the same kind of argument that you are positing, that to say the body cameras should be body worn cameras should be outfitted. The police should be outfitted with it. Because one is supporting.
All right, let me explain something to you, Obi.
And so how do we get to that point,
All right, so I'm going to ask you to pause. So I heard you just now.
There?
I heard you just now, right? So I'm going to speak for a couple minutes now. Nobody, certainly myself, did not suggest that people who advocate for the rollout and deployment by the JCF of body-worn cameras are people who do not mean the crime management situation well.
You say it over and over, Marlon.
My friend,
you're losing your mind. You say it
I
over
said
and
no
over.
such thing in relation to body-worn cameras. I spoke about people in relation to aspects of their commentary on the matter of police killings. Now, the point being made is that unlike a dispensation past, at present in Jamaica, we have an INDicom and we have iProbe that will serve to hold the police accountable. So unlike dispensation past, where the police investigated itself, separate and apart from iProbe, which is a construct of the police, we have a construct of Parliament, a Commission of Parliament, INDicom, which is separate and apart from the police, and they exist to ferret out whether the police acted unlawfully. So just to be clear.
You know what INDicom is saying about that? INDicom is also in the fray and joined and said it is a bugbear. It is a bugbearer for them without the police being outfitted with their body cam.
Did you have the benefit, Obi? Did you have the benefit of SSP?
And that is why.
We hear you. We hear you. Want to pause now?
And that is why they are joining in the call with group like Jamaica for Justice, people like myself who are talk show hosts and
all right, so,
others.
Yeah, man, we hear that. So you want to pause now? Because I have a simple question to ask you.
Hold on, and people within the university community where you are right now are calling for the body-worn camera to be outfitted.
And did you hear the segment with SSP Brooks earlier this morning? You know why I brought SSP Brooks on the program?
No, I
you didn't listen to that aspect. No, man, I asked a simple question, man. I had SSP Brooks. Obi,
I must tell you that I wouldn't put much value on what SSP
I kind of do things differently. I want you to talk and me to talk. I don't want us to talk simultaneously.
Yeah, man, you keep on interjecting with that nonsense, the discredit. Please.
All right. So what I say now is this. I asked you a simple question. I did the public conversation a considerable service this morning by having SSP Brooks on the program so that separate apart from what let me say what I'm saying, man. No, man, let me say what I'm saying. Let me say what I'm saying. Because to try and diminish Dennis Brooks in any way, shape or form will not score any points for the PNP, and it will not do you a service. It will do you the very opposite, which is a disservice. So let's be clear on that. I'm asking a simple question. Among other things, in my conversation with Dennis Brooks this morning, the question of body cameras came up, and I want to know if you had the benefit of listening, having heard him on the matter of body cameras. It's a simple question. Did you hear the discussion?
No,
you did not.
All
right,
not,
cool.
Marlon,
So an update was given on the matter of body cameras.
I'm doing some consultancy work, and I was really deep in it. And,
good, because as you know it is, and I appreciate that, because we have to keep the lights on, and we have to function as responsible adults.
Right now, I show you the respect and so on to basically give you some minutes, so I even have to leave, but all right, my friend, keep on. And have a good rest of the program. God bless you.
All right, all the best, Obi. Thank you so much.
Love.
That was our Monday and Tuesday host listeners, Conrad, the fireman, the self-styled fireman, O'Brien, speaking with us here on the program. Do we have another call, Madam Producer? All right, there's no call. But just to be clear, listeners, I invited SSP Brooks as someone who is in a position to speak definitively and inform us accurately on the matter of body-worn cameras on the program early this morning, and he did so. He provided important perspectives as to where the JCF is with the matter of rollout of body-worn cameras. Just to be very clear, and my position stands, the people who are seeking to harp on Jamaica being in a recession are not unmindful of the reality confronting us. The fact that people are in jobs and so on. They're not unmindful of that. What they're seeking to do is to believe that things that are negatives here in Jamaica will somehow resonate with the electorate in a way to cause the opposition PNP to gain votes or to score points. And that, I dare say, in my best border cat voice, that will never happen. We run to the break, take the 11 o'clock, and come back with Dr. Diana Thorburn, hopefully, at 11:10. Listeners, this is your mid-morning program, straight up, right here on the sound of News Thought 93 FM. I'm your host for this morning, Marlon Morgan, and I'm joined in this segment by the Director of Research at the Caribbean Policy and Research Institute, Capri, Dr. Diana Thorburn, as we put the spotlight, listeners, on a matter that warrants examination, it warrants public discussion, and I'm delighted that at the level of a think tank, the Academy, Capri has seen it fit to focus attention on women in organized violence. Good morning, Dr. Thorburn. Welcome to the program.
Morning. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Jamaica, Dr. Thorburn, has, been saddled by the scourge of criminality. We oftentimes have a profile, at least in our minds, as to the typical perpetrator, the typical offender, person who would come into conflict with the law from a particularly an organized crime perspective. The young black Jamaican male. Yes? What informed this research undertaking, this body of work on which Capri embarked, first and foremost? Give some context to that for the listeners.
So that perception is warranted.
Yeah.
The majority of participants in what we call in Jamaica the organized violence ecosystem are young men, mainly from poor informal communities. What informed this research was three things. One is there is a strong perception by stakeholders across the board, security stakeholders, policymakers, that women play an increasingly important role in the organized violence ecosystem. The second thing is that around the world there's a trend towards more female participation in organized crime and violence. And then the third thing is that if we want to understand gangs better, and we do because they are the source of our violence problem, then we need to have a complete understanding of who is doing what, even at the most granular level. So that led us to ask, in the context of Jamaica's organized violence problem, where are the women? Are they as prominent and as strategically placed as the stakeholders seem to think? Are they rising? There's this rising female gangstress narrative that obtains in many other parts of the world. Are we seeing that here? And then, whatever we do see, what does that mean for policy?
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to come to the unpacking of some of the key findings. But first and foremost, one of the renowned bloggers, certainly in the Jamaican space, Sir P, has a particular moniker that he attaches to women who operate in ways that are in furtherance of criminality. He uses the term kerosene. There's a term that you espoused elsewhere in Radio Land. Just remind me of that term again to describe women who give succor to and operate in furtherance of organized violence. What's the term again?
Well, broadly, they're facilitators. What Sir P calls a kerosene is what is usually called a honeypot.
Honeypot, yes, that's it.
Right. The other term that we came across in the Jamaican context, Sir P doesn't use it, but we heard a lot of, because we actually got a lot of evidence from social media and popular media.
Oh, well, indeed.
Which we'll get to when I explain why we had to turn there. But another term that comes up a lot is grasmite.
Yes.
when referring to the women. And to these women, you know, of course, the clinical term is a facilitator. These women play many roles that enable the gangs to operate and enable gangsters to operate. Sometimes they are reproductive roles, meaning they're providing care and comfort and food and shelter and solace and advice.
Sometimes they're decoys.
Sometimes they're much more strategic roles. They're lures. They're setting up targets.
Yes.
They are gaining the trust of a rival in order to get him in a certain place at a certain time. They are pointing out targets to assassins. So that is a very broad role of facilitation, which we have the name, thanks to Sir P, of kerosene.
Yeah. All right. So take us to the study itself now, in terms of what were some of the things gleaned and unearthed from your academic endeavor in this regard.
Okay. Well, the first thing, and this was one of the things that was confounding, and one of the reasons that we spent so much more time on this study than we normally would, we've been working on this since 2019,
Wow.
is that the data was not giving us a clear picture. The data for Jamaica on arrests and convictions of women and the trends were not in line with the narrative of the rising female gang stress. So the data was not supporting what the stakeholders here are saying, and it was not in line with what international trends are. So across the world, women's incarceration rates are increasing higher than men's and faster than men's and higher than population growth. So there are more women involved in violent crime. And even in the Latin America, Caribbean region, we see that. But in Jamaica, women's incarceration rates have declined over the past 10 years, in tandem with the overall decline in incarceration rates. And the arrest data for violent crimes, particularly murder and shooting is very important because women do commit violent crimes of all sorts, including murder. But shooting is very specific to gang operations. 98% of shooting homicides in Jamaica take place outside of the context of any other crime, meaning it's not in the context of a robbery or kidnapping, rape, or any other violent crime, which means that most of the shootings that give us these record high numbers of murders are targeted, isolated, premeditated incidents carried out in the context of territorial wars, reprisals, and so on. We do not see women figure as perpetrators in that kind of violence. Women commit acts of domestic violence, interpersonal violence, both directly and indirectly. Women are arrested for charged with and convicted of murder, but they're not arrested, charged with, or convicted of shooting or shooting deaths. And that's very key. So what the data was then telling us is, okay, so the patterns are that women's involvement in violent crime is relegated to the domestic and interpersonal sphere, and it is not in the gang sphere, which runs counter to the narrative of the rising female gang stress.
Yeah.
One of the case studies we had, the woman was called Jamaica's first gun woman, but she never actually fired a gun. So that was the first thing. And then the arrest data also was not supporting the idea that there were droves of women suddenly getting involved in gangs. In 2024, from what we could tell was the first time they recorded the proportion of women arrested in gang-related arrests was 4%. You know, that on the face of it is a small number.
Yeah.
Whether it's an increase, we don't know because we don't have the comparable data from years before. So the first confounding thing was that the statistical data of arrests and incarceration were not giving support to the narrative of the
But as researchers, Dr. Thorburn, were you guys mindful, though, that it may be an imperfect scenario in Jamaica to look at the incarceration rate, because invariably incarceration rates would be a function of the detection of the crime in the first place. And so if it is that our criminal outfits are so proficient and are so adept at what they're doing, such that they can obviate detection, that may be a limitation to what comes before us as researchers and is showing up in the detection data, the incarceration data.
So that was one thing. The other thing about incarceration rates is that Jamaica's incarceration rates are extremely low and have been declining. We also
on the women's side, that is, right?
No, all over.
Generally?
Jamaica's incarceration rates have been declining since 2011. We also know from previous research that there is an empirical relationship in Jamaica between incarceration rates and murder rates. It's an inverse correlation. The higher the incarceration rate, the lower the murder rate, and vice versa. So from having that contextual knowledge and what you just mentioned about the better criminals
would
evading
not go
criminals
detected. Yeah, they would be.
We knew that the incarceration data could not tell us what we were thinking we might find. The other part of it, though, is, remember, the arrest data was also not substantiating the narrative. But what explains that is the nature of women's engagement. There is a phenomenon in criminology called the women's invisibility phenomenon, where the crimes that women commit, particularly in the context of organized violence, are harder to detect, and also they tend to be overlooked by law enforcement because of their own historical biases and patriarchal biases of women as victims and not as agents. So that kind of female invisibility phenomenon, which is something observed around the world, made us realize that the data alone is not going to be able to give us a picture of what is happening. We had to look to other sources, which is then when we turned to the bloggers and the vloggers and
which
the
is where I was
going to
go just now.
Media and so on.
So unpack that some more for us, Doc. The social media sphere, the researchers decided to pivot toward or glean some more from that space.
As one source.
As one source, yes.
We looked to several sources. One was interviews with stakeholders and people on the ground, formal and informal interviews. So the policymakers, people in the justice system, JCF themselves, etc. Other academic and policy research in similar contexts to ours, because as I said, this is a phenomenon that has been observed across the region, in the Caribbean itself, broader Latin American Caribbean region. And then, crucially, were the gang trials. So the anti-gang legislation has made facilitation crimes that did not exist as crimes
come to the fore.
So we were able to use both the gang trial records as well as gang arrests and charges under the Anti-Gang Act to further pick up where the women are in the organized violence ecosystem. So it was several other qualitative data sources that we were able to use to be able to come up with what we did to determine what is the profile of women in organized violence, what roles are they playing, and what is the extent which we could speculate, and then also what are the drivers of women's participation in this.
I'm going to ask you to paint and that picture for us some more in terms of the profile, because coming through Dr. Thorburn in our popular culture, the music, you hear, songs seemingly glorifying the role of women. You will hear some artists, I can't quite say the lyrics on air, but they're saying gunman in she whatever is that she like. So it's like, there's a premium among some women, among kerosines, to use that word loosely, for men who are gunslinging persons. So help us with the profile of the woman who is involved in criminality.
So actually, one of the very first sources of the profile is a 2004 song by Tanya Stevens called Gangsta Gal. And she actually got it very accurately, what we found through our research of the roles that they play. They play roles that may not be easily seen at the surface, pointing back to what I said earlier about invisibility, but they are strategic roles to the operation of the gang, and they are gendered roles. Key among these is the role of courier.
Yeah.
Women are often, sometimes the term is a gun bag.
Mm-hmm.
They carry the weapons, they carry the ammunition, they hold the key to the safe that the weapons are kept. They arrange for the transportation of weapons, including transshipment from overseas. We have the evidence of intercepted shipments where the consignee and the shipper are women, including women in the diaspora. And this is a very key role. Remember what I said earlier about shootings being crucial to how gangs operate.
Indeed.
Guns are the tool of trade.
And the tools of reinforcement.
The guns is very important. But because women are often overlooked to be carrying out these roles, they can be carrying these weapons and they're not detected. Or they may be suspected, but there isn't a female on the ops team to properly search her.
Yes, to ferret out.
So the roles are strategic, both in terms of the operation of the gang, but both in terms of the gender advantage that they hold in playing these powerful roles, because they can do better as a courier than a man can because of their gender advantage.
So the academy,
role.
So the academy may be in its infancy in unpacking this aspect I'm going to know, Dr. Thorburn, in that some study years ago cited some high schools here in Jamaica, secondary level institutions, from whence the vast majority of our persons who have come into conflict with the law, particularly our hardened criminals, hail from these spaces. I'm wondering if this is something that has been explored before, or if it may be ripe for exploration, in that in profiling the women who would be conscripts for organized violence and criminality generally, if we can make an association to, what happens in the education system.
Okay, so I would argue that the fact that these high schools produced a disproportionate number of gangsters is not a function of the school, it's a function of the communities where these schools are located. What we do know, without any doubt, is that gangs are concentrated in informal communities, and that gangs are able to conscript and recruit both boys and girls, both men and women, because they function as the most powerful social, political, and economic force
unit
in
the space. Yeah.
So it's not so much a matter of the school. It's a matter of the communities that are feeding the students into those schools.
All right, but when I reference schools,
schools are doing is replicating the population of the community within the school walls, and there, so you're getting almost a microcosm of what's happening in the community. Out in the community, that the school is connected to.
And the reason why I read schools was to make to explore the question of education, meaning educational attainment. If the folk who does not get ahead in terms of passing subjects or acquiring skills at the secondary level, and indeed going on to matriculate to higher ed, are the persons who are typically now the players in gang activity and organized violence.
Well, we do have research that shows that education levels are not correlated with levels of violence. So it's not how much education that you have that is a causal factor of whether you become a criminal or not. Because you have many uneducated people who are not criminals, many people who didn't finish high school who are not criminals, much less gangsters and violent criminals. So I think we have to be careful about how we are ascribing causality to things. We do know that many gangsters, the data is very clear, have not finished high school. Many of them are not functionally literate, but that is not necessarily the cause of why they have turned to gangs. This is why things like skills training, education programs, and so on do not work to displace recruitment into gangs. They're good on their own because we want more people educated, we want more people skilled. But if the goal is to try and steer perspective
away from maladaptive stuff,
it's not going to work. We know that because of the evidence of years of doing it, and it doesn't work. And also we know that because the theory of change just does not hold. The gangs that are able to recruit are the most powerful and dominant force in those communities. These are the guys who get the girls.
Yeah,
These are the guys who have bikes. These are the guys who have
Indeed,
cash.
they have all the pull factors, all the allure.
There
Flashy
is
cars.
no social intervention that can compete with that.
Yeah, and which is why we as law-abiding and well-thinking citizens are delighted with the approach of the police to target gangs and disrupt gang activity and to essentially disrupt the operations of gangsters, because that's the way to break the back of this thing.
Absolutely, Marlon, but policing alone will not do it. We have to have structural change in the communities where these gangs find safe havens.
Well, excellent point.
If you take out the 400 killers that we're told are out there, they're going to come right back in another year or two.
If you don't have the accompanying and attendant suite of social interventions and re-socializing.
Not social interventions. You have to have change in the communities where those gangs come from.
Well, in the minute we have left, enumerate those changes. Give us a sense as to what those changes ought to be and should look like.
Those communities have to be formalized. Those communities are ungoverned spaces where the state cannot enter. Both in terms of
access is not there.
Political structure and the physical structure. The state does not have a presence in those communities. The people in those communities do not own where they live. They do not have property rights. If somebody comes to kick them out of where they live, they have no recourse. So when we often hear, people in the community, you must turn in the gangsters in your community, and then where are they going to go after that? Yeah. They are there at the behest of the don of the community. They don't have any property rights to say, okay, I'm going to inform on the don and tell the police that they're there and think that I'm going to come back to a roof over my head the next day.
That's right.
That's not going to happen. That's just not practical or realistic. We have to change the communities.
These fundamental.
So they no longer serve as safe haven.
The zinc fences, you name it.
Yeah. The police can't do that. That's out of police realm.
Yeah, man. It has to be a joined-up government approach. Police in tandem with just the zinc fencing issue. How JSIF and places, institutions like those go and just reorient.
Even above that, Marlon, these have to be political decisions to de-garrisonize these communities, to give property rights to these communities, to move people out. If they're environmentally hazardous places to be living in, we have to recognize that the political.
So it's a complete overhaul then of these spaces.
It has to be a forest, not a trees issue in this regard.
All right. We have to leave it there, though, Dr. Thorburn. Thank you so much for your insights, for the perspective, and we commend Capri on this body of work and, by extension, its overall impact in the landscape. Keep it up, and we look forward to others to come. That was, listeners, the Director of Research at the UEMONA-based Capri, Dr. Diana Thorburn. We run to the break, and when we come back, we will be taking more of your calls on our flow lines 212-9824 and our digital line 462-0919. We run to the break, soon come back. On Straight Up, you're tuned to News Talk 93 FM. I'm Marlon Morgan, and we're running back to the phone lines. Good morning, caller. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners in Riyadh and abroad. That's very important,
Morning, sir. Thanks for that. Yeah, man. Okay, what's on your mind this morning?
This morning, you were talking to a caller. I think the caller name was Carl, right? From Clarendon, right?
Yeah, Carl from Southeast Clarendon, I think he said.
Right. He was talking about some trust factor, right? Am I right?
Yes, in relation to the opposition leader, positions espoused versus manifest actions and the variance between the two.
Okay, yeah, so I'm correct.
Yeah, man.
Anyway, I just want to say my piece. In 2016, our Prime Minister, because he's my Prime Minister also, he was campaigning on the promise of trust. On the promise of trust. He was saying that the PNP was doing some wastages in terms of all the sectors. He was talking about the PNP was wasting money. and when you come into power, it's going to stop all wastages. I haven't seen that.
Oh.
Because if I remember correctly, I remember that in fact, money was still wasting, even up to now.
Give me a sense as to money being wasted.
CMU with Railroad and those some other people.
Oh, so that was money wasted?
Right, there's a lot of money missing.
Oh, so that was money wasted.
We check some more sectors, even though I think there's money still missing.
All right, let me give you an example of something, Chief.
I don't have long to speak, so but I'm gonna.
We know that. But hold on. We know that. But guess what now, Chief? It's in this conversation.
You don't know my credit limit.
You're going to say what you're saying, and then I'm going to speak. So what's not going to happen is that both of us are going to speak at the same time. But you will say things, and then I will say things. No, man, I'm not going to afford you a monologue entirely, though. I'm not going to afford you a monologue entirely, though. You made mention of wastage, and you went on to cite CMU, I think, and so on. In the flagship program, sir, that is called the Spark program. You know, one of the things that has been built into it, because one of the things that Jamaica.
You can speak after I finish speak.
All right, go ahead. I'll allow you to make another point, and then I'll say what I'm saying.
In light of that, how do us as Jamaicans?
How do we? Yeah.
And next thing again, he was talking about.
I didn't hear the point you made a while ago, sir. You're asking, how do we do what?
He was talking about implementing the impeachment law. He haven't done that. So how can we trust the Prime Minister?
Oh, you want to know how? Because
next thing again, in 2020, he go around and he said to Jamaican, look here, the PNP want to call election in COVID, and I'm not going to call it. And yet, in the height of COVID, he called it. So how can we trust the Prime Minister? How can we do that?
All right, so let me take one at a time. So if you're concerned about your credit, you can hang up now and listen to the response.
How can we trust the Prime Minister?
You can hang up now and listen to the response.
And abroad.
All right. So thank you for your input this morning. All right, but just before I come to that other call, the Spark program, sir. One of the things that eluded Jamaica over many years was certain quality assurance to avert what you have described as wastage. And in this program, there is money set aside for the technical element of Spark, the quality assurance element of Spark, by way of competent and capable civil engineers to ensure that what is being undertaken in terms of the scoping of the work and the execution of the work is fit for purpose and meets the requisite quality standards, so that we're not doing road infrastructure work only for the road to wash away with the first shower of rainfall. All right, we're running to another call. Morning caller.
I'm gonna have to touch about the issue.
You can touch base with me about 5 or 10 times. It doesn't matter. Go ahead.
Because you're going to talk about, because when you tell people say try your count at the same time, just look at the man in the mirror, because I heard you on several interviews and you're that type of person. But talking about recession, where you about say the country is not in recession. And I heard the Prime Minister and some of you guys talk about the government manage the economy and we can do this and do that. Now the hospital needs several things. The economy doing well, yet they can't provide them. Struggling to pay the teachers. Economy doing very well, right?
There is no struggle to pay any teacher, Marsh. In fact, the teachers who are to be paid their graduate allowance, which is what came in the news just earlier this week, which would have seen some JT members, the teachers who are entitled to this allowance being restive, as they perhaps should, and those persons are being paid between today and tomorrow by the Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information.
You realize that last month they get paid late? And the month before they get paid late.
That's still not going to win any votes for the PNP. But can I say this to you, because you made mention of...
Hold on a second.
Hold on. I want to say something for 10 seconds. I want to say something for 10 seconds and then you come back in. So just to be clear, Marsh, you made mention a while ago of some things that the hospital need. Do you recall, per Dr. Alfred Dawes, that in 2015, surgeries were being undertaken utilizing garbage bags as personal protective equipment? and the diluting of antibacterial soap in our hospitals. So watered down soap under Fenton Ferguson, and of course garbage bags being used as personal protective equipment in our hospitals, as per the comments made by Dr. Alfred Dawes some years ago. So when you talk about issues in hospitals, let's remember those.
You really want me to answer that?
Well,
you wrap the garbage bag around him. He wrapped the garbage bag around him for protection. Yes, but the people then did get the operation done.
Are you suggesting people not getting operations done?
No. What they get the operation done. No, they get the surgery done. No, they are getting it done now. They sit in hospital, cheering at the hospital.
And they're not getting the surgery. And they're not getting the surgery.
And you remember, hold on, you remember that the similar thing about the dead babies at the hospital, what Dennis Brooks, your JLP activist friend, run up and down and talk about. You remember the similar thing?
Is Dennis Brooks or Abka Fitzhenley? Which one of them you want to cite on this one?
No, I talk about Abka Fitzhenley, yes. Him get award to run up and down with the dead baby.
If I help you with the PNP talking points.
Hold on, I don't want to forget this.
Yeah, I don't want to forget the talking point. Go ahead.
You're brilliant in that. Yeah. Some baby is dead. And
the Prime Minister heard them. And the Prime Minister heard them.
Yes, he used to listen. He used to listen to that baby. But when it happened under Christopher Tufton, right? You know what? You remember what Christopher Tufton
I get to understand, Marsh, that he's busy listening to the people of Jamaica and attending to infrastructure,
when the babies them dead,
attending to social housing needs.
Listen to me.
Yeah.
You want me to tell you something? Well, this is what I talk about with you.
Sure,
go ahead. You see your baby, yet when you talk, you know what nobody talk. But may I remind you of something, but you're not going to hear this. Some baby died under Tufton stewardship. You remember what Tufton said?
No, I remember.
And the mother fall by some improper hygienic behavior caused those baby to die. You remember? Because innocent. You get the point I'm making?
So, Sir
the Prime Minister skillful in hearing dead babies.
So, Sir Marsh.
Yes.
We are entitled to our own opinion, but not our own facts. The matter you're referring to.
Just tell me this.
Hold on, man. But it's all we can't talk at the same time. You said something a while ago. I am speaking for a few seconds now. May I speak for a few seconds? So I'm putting it to you, Sir Marsh, that yes, unfortunately, we have had loss of neonates in our public healthcare facilities, and the clinical explanation that was provided touched and concerned matters having to do with the propagation of bacteria and other hazards to those neonates, largely because of hygienic deficiencies or deficits. Those are clinical, technical points. And none of us, myself included, do not diminish the value of any neonate by referring to them as not being babies in the real sense. All right? So we're entitled to our own opinions, but not to our own set of facts. Go ahead with the other point, Chief.
When Abkafit-Lendy, newsbreakers, where he was, because in 2010, you realize that 2010 another PNP didn't have power, right?
Yeah.
You realize that in 2010 a whole heap more babies dead under the JLP, and the PNP never run up and no, I gotta tell you this. Where me used to work, I get hours of overtime because baby that dead like flies all down at Jubilee, right? And me have to work a whole heap of overtime. And I tell you when me used to work, that's something when me know. And that's what baby did really dead.
What were those deaths attributed to, Sir Marsh?
It's the similar thing. It's a similar thing.
Oh.
And baby dead. And then
I can share something with you now. I can share something with you. Do you agree, Sir Marsh, that as Jamaica maintains a stable economy and manage our financial affairs in a way that will see more revenues being generated, we will be in a better position to maintain our public healthcare facilities in better ways so as to obviate or at least militate against the presence and outbreak of bacteria which will cause babies to die. Do you agree with that observation?
I mean, listen, but now I'm not tell you something. I agree with anything what you say, really, no, because I understand where you come from.
I can be quite, you know.
No,
he can be quite a proposition.
You always quick to tell people that the PNP won't get any vote from that. So you can't tell me now the JLP will get vote from what you're saying?
Yeah, man, vote from managing the economy. Well, let me just use 15 seconds and respond to you. When you manage the economy such that higher paying jobs are secured and higher levels of revenue are generated, you're able to do more for the Jamaican people, including Marlon Morgan and including Mr. Marsh. You follow me? And yes, those things, we trust that those things will inure to greater levels of political support, including votes.
Me here, you come with one argument. Both were fit already.
Fitz Jackson?
Fitz tell us that the economy good?
Fitch.
Yes.
That's an excellent question, Sir Marsh.
Yeah, did they say the economy good?
Excellent question. You remember the quote I used this morning when I said, your actions speak so loudly that I cannot hear what you say. So Fitch may not have said the economy is good, but by virtue of Fitch's action, which counts for more than Fitch's words, my friend, the economy is good so till it can't good no more. Because, and I'll tell you why, Marsh. Let me use 20 seconds because I know you want to come back in with another observation. Let me just assist you with this, right? Fitch Ratings Agency in the first quarter of calendar year 2024 considered Jamaica, what was happening in the economy, and ascribed to us a rating of BB minus with a positive outlook. And after a year, after the passage of Hurricane Beryl, Tropical Storm Raphael, and higher than normal volumes of rainfall and all of the other things that may constitute external shocks, Fitch came in the first quarter of 2025 and ascribed to Jamaica the same rating. So it's like teacher take up your book and give you the same marks based on the situation you were in, the same assessment you got. What does that say about the economy, Sir Marsh?
You know if Fitch are rated for?
What am I rated for? You tell me.
It's the paying of the debt. Your work, your money not enough, but you pay your debt like hell and people rate you. And then we can say, oh, Marlon, yeah, man, I a good boy, man. And we pay your debt. Lend him the money, and we pay you, man. No care what, me go pay you. At that situation that Jamaica, you know. Cannot joke. We pay in debt. But the people inside of this, you think some way you attack? You think you can go to supermarket, mountain when people get paid? You think you can go to the tax? You think you can go to go tax? So when you talk about people now lose their job, you have people that pay them little and nothing, right? And when they get the salary can't do anything, and then the GCT, they can't everything. You say when you run up and talk about no new tax. You think the Jamaican people don't the tax in every Jesus thing where we are by already, and that's why they get more money more where them projects to get. Sometime a month time, a year time. We know the whole running. So when you talk about new tax, the tax don't begin long time. Because when you talk about economy, what are we exporting? Yeah, listen to this. Yeah. What are we exporting to earn the money where we are get?
So we export a number of things. So we export Jamaica's services, our service in the tourism industry, because our output from tourism is really a service, you know that, right? We are exporting. But hold on, you ask me a question, G, and may I provide some responses and some perspectives. Because I will be the first to admit and agree with you, Sir Marsh, that Jamaica is nowhere near unlocking its potential as it relates to the exports of commodities, agricultural commodities in particular, because strategically too, we shouldn't be content with exporting agricultural products in their natural form. We should be seeking to go more the route of agro-processed things, meaning value added, because those will fetch higher prices. So when you turn a papaya into papaya puree or mango into mango puree, and more money that. You appreciate that point, Sir Marsh?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to come to the business of tax rate versus tax take. Do you appreciate that the whole point of managing an economy is to allow for certainty in terms of what people are going to be taxed, to allow for the taxes to be collected such that you're able to fix road and bring water system. So the whole point is that you want to promote economic activity so that you collect more revenues without having to even tax the people in terms of more higher tax rates. Because tax rate, Sir Marsh, is different from tax take. So the whole point of an economy, is for you to have the same taxes in place and even reducing those taxes as we have done. The Prime Minister, when he spoke at the JLP conference in November, you may not have watched it, but it is something in which you should interest yourself because you have to know what your opponents are doing and saying. You follow me? As I do, which is why you see me taking people elsewhere in Radioland, right? So watch me now. When the GCT on electricity is proposed to move from 15% to 7.5%, you're putting money back into the pockets of those people who would pay those light bills. So those things will see economic activity, yes, increasing really, so that you can collect more taxes ultimately and do more for people like Mr. Marsh, Salah, Al, Conrad O'Brien, Colin Bell, and Ralston.
You want me to tell you something about kleptocracy?
Yeah, sure.
And generalship? Because for ship that come to Jamaica, and on the Santa Maria will come here with Columbus. The first ship come here are really generalship. Right? When you say you reduce electricity rate,
the tax on electricity.
The tax on it.
Yeah, man.
You know, sir, my son just said to me, Daddy, after general ships, all them have to do is to send a bigger bill to you. And the tax, where them are going to put on, then little more tax just stop on and it come back and look like it at the same place where it used to be.
All right, I know that point. But Sir Marsh, I'm going to remind you of something before I ask you something. Yes. I said to you earlier in this conversation that as Jamaicans and as citizens of the world, we are entitled to our own opinions, but not to our own facts, right? And I'm saying to you, do you believe that the JPS bills are arbitrarily calculated? Well, the better question is this. The better question is this, Sir Marsh. Let me ask you the better question. Let me withdraw that one. Yeah, let me withdraw that one and ask you this better question. Based on the JPS's obligations under OUR and the guaranteed standards, right? Do you appreciate that if you have cause to interrogate or to question your JPSCO bill, and if you have grievances with your JPSCO bill, you have a mechanism for redress or airing that grievance? Do you recall and appreciate that that is so?
Yeah, I know all the
everything. So why not sit down with me so that's what our reasoning, and then I can give you an appropriate color shirt.
You know what OUR mean?
Mr. Marsh. You don't think it is time for you to move? You remember Claro, move up to Claro. You don't think I have a shirt that I'd want to change you out of and give you a new shirt? Let us just sit down one day and reason. And let me tell you why you should put on a certain color shirt.
You know what OUR mean when you talk about OUR? You know what OUR mean?
It means Officer of Utilities Regulation, but I'm sure Mr. Marsh, just like PhD, I know Mr. Marsh has another definition for it.
No.
Tell me what it means, Sir Marsh.
OUR mean out of your reach. OUR just go around and work.
And remind our listeners what PhD means. Permanent head?
Damage.
All right then, because so Sir Marsh will have his own definitions for the various abbreviations or acronyms.
Because let me tell you, Marlon.
Yes,
Marlon,
Chief, I'm with you.
We out here feel it, The prosperity only work and do when the sun is right.
You raise a good point, Sir Marsh. You raise a good point.
And some other. That's where the prosperity.
Can I share some with you? Can I share some? The other day, some weeks ago. No man. Not at this time. But I will get to that point. But watch me now, Sir Marsh. In December, I left a board meeting at a public body and I was traveling down Mullines Road. And I saw a massive structure on Mullines Road where Foss Richard was in. Of course, I was traveling west on Mullines Road, heading towards, St. Catherine, basically. So just to be clear, Marsh, so you have some Tapanaris and more moneyed people in this country who are seeing opportunities in the country and are seizing opportunities. And then there are a set of people in the country who are causing their political supporters to walk and hold them head down and see the glass as half empty, while many of them themselves are tapping into opportunities that are within reach and are available in the economy. I think it's a disservice they're doing to their political supporters, when they are presenting and purveying this doom and gloom. And you know why it struck me that evening when I was going home and I saw the Fastridge building? It struck me because earlier that morning I was listening to Ralston Hyman on a certain radio station here in Jamaica.
Economy like Ralston Hyman.
We know that, man. We know that. Nobody don't know economy like Ralston. But what I'm saying, Sir Marsh, is that the narrative and the thrust of the discussion on that program, it was so negative, while there are people in this economy who are making headway. Them are rub 2 shillings together, them are rub 2 things together and forging ahead, and other people a walk and a hold them head down like them a hug. It cannot be that way, my friend. A political party does a disservice to its supporters when it pervades doom and gloom instead of uplifting people. And like Marcus Garvey said to them, up you mighty race, you can accomplish what you will.
When the JLP was campaigning, when the JLP was campaigning a couple of years ago, right?
What
them did I preach? Positiveness? Them did I tell us that the PNP
them
was
did I preach
good?
Positiveness, because them did I preach what them way I will come do. Remember, I was in that engine room. I'm going to read something for you, Sir Marsh. I'm going to read something for you. There's a WhatsApp group I'm in, and there's a picture of the Gleaner newspaper this morning. It says, JLP good for jobs, PNP better for the poor. And you know what one of the commentators in the group says here? If you want a job, vote JLP. If you want to stay poor, vote PNP. That is the Gleaner, Not that comment I made a while ago, The Gleaner headline is...
Listen to this. Tell the person who said that. He must stop behave like he's a ventriloquist.
All right, cool. We have to leave it there, Sir Marsh. We'll talk another time, my brother.
You know what the respond? All right.
No, another time. I chew out of time, my friend. We'll talk another time. We'd like to thank listeners.